Nigerian Stock Exchange and its listed companies are some of the entities to be impacted by the revised Companies and Allied Matters Act. Beyond the restructuring effects that the CAMA is expected to create on the board of listed companies, the Nigerian Stock Exchange is one of the quasi-regulators also expected to comply with the provisions of CAMA. This is because the NSE is currently in its transitioning phase from a company limited by guarantee to a public company structure. For the Executive Director Relations at the NSE, Ms. Tinu Adeyawe, joins us now to unpack the benefits of the Companies and Allied Matters Act for the exchange and its listed companies. Thank you very much, Ms. Tinu Adeyawe, for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. The Nigerian Stock Exchange was a member of the Technical Advisory Committee on the review of the CAMA 1990. What's the position of the exchange today on the final document?
We were a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, that is true. We are quite pleased, like everyone else, that the most extensive piece of business legislation that has come out of this country, being the CAMA 2020, has now come into existence and received presidential assent. As you know, the old CAMA is already 30 years old, and before that, we were using a 1968 CAMA. So it's a long time in coming because there have been a lot of changes in the business environment, in international practice with relation to corporate entities, in corporate governance, and just in the way that governments treat companies and corporations. So this is a fantastic development in our view. I think that what will be most important is the implementation of the CAMA when it actually comes into effect.
So what does this new law portend for Nigerian businesses listed and non-listed?
Okay, so the new law has a lot of provisions. It's like 870 sections of really key provisions that will help companies. Let me start by saying that one of the underpinnings of the new law is the ease of doing business. As you know, that has been a running matter in Nigeria, that we need to ease doing business for corporate entities. A report of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, the 2019 report, says that we have about 41.5 million small, medium, and micro enterprises in Nigeria. And a Smedan report in the same year talks about how these companies provide about 48% of the GDP. So there's in the CAMA, there's a recognition that we have small companies, and there's a recognition that we need to ease life for these companies. What are some of these things to ease life? First thing, now you can have a company where you have just one shareholder, as opposed to two shareholders in the past. For small companies, that can also be, you can have just one director. You don't have to have an AGM. You don't have to have an auditor to audit your financials at the end of your financial year. Those are some of the advantages. For every type of company, not just small companies, it's also cheaper and less stressful to do business. So let me give you an example. With respect to share capital, when you are registering a company, you have to have a share capital, as you know. In the current CAMA, the capital that you have to say that you will have at the point of incorporation is your authorized share capital, which would normally be more than the issued share capital. And therefore, when you're calculating duty at the point of registration, if it's on your authorized share capital, the duty is higher. The new CAMA says it should be on your issued share capital. And I think this goes in line with the general understanding that is now worldwide, that you should tax people at the point of consumption. So let's use your issued share capital. That's the capital that you've actually issued and you're using. And so it's cheaper for every type of company to incorporate. There are a lot of other provisions in the Act that are just around easing doing business. There's a recognition that now you have that a lot of business is done online, and so acceptance of electronic documents, CTCs of electronic documents. You don't have to bother yourself going to always filing physical documents. If we go on from ease of doing business very briefly onto corporate governance, there's also a lot of provisions in the Act that now address key issues of corporate governance that have developed between 1990 and today. I'll give you some examples. You now have the fact that if you're a public company, you have to have 3 independent directors. Now, all the companies that are listed on the exchange are public companies. And it also says that if before so going on from independent directors, you now also have a situation where you cannot be more than a director of more than 5 public companies if you're a public company director. And it says that if you've had more than 5 five directorships, you have 2 years to wind down to the 5. A recognition of the fact that one human being really cannot give the type of attention that a director is supposed to give to more than 5 corporate entities. There's also transparency that has come in. And one of the things that the exchange is well noted for is issues around integrity, issues around transparency, and issues around disclosure. So now you cannot obfuscate shareholding. You have to, there's a requirement that beneficial owners of shareholding have to be disclosed. You now have a situation where there's a reduction in what is significant shareholding from 10% to 5%. And 5% is really the world standard. So we were out of the world standard when we required 10%. It's now reduced to 5%. You have to disclose. You disclose to the company, and most importantly, you also disclose to the CAC. So when I say implementation is important, one of the things that will be important is, will the CAC, when it starts operating this law, when those disclosures are made, will the disclosures be something that anybody can go off and find, so that I know not only the entities that are the legal shareholders, but I know the beneficial ownership under those shareholders, and I know who has significant shareholding, and I know who has, who is really in control of the company. I think another thing is this issue of the chairman and the CEO of a public company cannot be the same person. It's a fantastic, matter whose time has really come and is the practice in other jurisdictions. But to have it directly in our law is, I think, a very good thing. So these are just some of the general things in the Act. I think read the Act, because as we've noted, the old Act was in existence for 30 years, has been in existence for 30 years, and that's what we've been used to. So now we all have to go back to the drawing board and look at this Act and see how it changes the way that we do things. But on a first blush, we think that it's done a lot of good, and it will really change the map, and also put Nigeria really on the map as a country that has upgraded its corporate laws.
Okay, so how will this revision affect the demutualization plans of the exchange?
Okay, so this revision doesn't necessarily affect the demutualization plans of the exchange directly, in a very direct fashion. As you know, we have a Nigerian Stock Exchange Demutualization Act that provides the legal basis for us to demutualize, and we have pursued and been pursuing the terms of that act, as well as the demutualization rules of our regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to demutualize. And so we are a company at the present time, just that we're a company limited by guarantee. When we demutualize, we'll be a company limited by shares. And so all the parts of the provisions of the new act that relate to a company limited by shares, we will have to comply with.
So how is the NSE positioned to take advantage of these new opportunities, particularly in the derivatives segment?
We are very well positioned. We're there are netting provisions in the CAMA, in the new CAMA. As you know, the Nigerian Stock Exchange for a couple of years has been very interested and worked assiduously with other market players to build an exchange-traded derivatives market. One of the two of the things that an exchange-traded derivatives market needs to have is the netting provisions. These are the provisions that ensure that the financial markets and the financial market infrastructure, the central the central counterparty, that there's certainty in settlement for derivatives trades. And basically, what is this? It means that the law now has provisions that ensure that certainty. Those provisions include provisions that will ensure that the normal process when a company is insolvent follows the process for netting. And what do I mean by that? So if a company is insolvent, normally you have, the liquidator comes in and, does what it needs to do according to the relevant laws and rules. The netting provisions allow the central counterparty, that's the CCP, to actually be able to do what it's supposed to do, which is to ensure that even transactions that are in flight, that are in cause when the insolvency occurs, they can continue to settlement without the liquidator, so to speak, interrupting and therefore disrupting the financial market. It's a key provision for the financial market. And we did a study in 2014, 2015 as to whether the Nigerian market was ready for derivatives. That study showed that it was, but that there were two things that were missing. One thing that was missing was the law. Now we have the law. The other thing that was missing was this CCP, the infrastructure. And we've worked for a while with key actors within the financial markets to create a company known as NG Clearing, which will now go through the licensing process to become the CCP. So it's a very exciting time, not only for us, but for the financial market, because derivatives are risk products for the financial markets. They help to de-risk the financial markets. And these provisions and the CCP put Nigeria on the map as a country where exchange-traded derivatives can be recognized and where folks from all over the globe who are interested in investing in our market can be certain that their trades will settle without, as they would in other countries, without any local peculiarities. And that's very key as a member of the Committee of Financial Nations.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Awe, for sharing your thoughts there with us. Ms. Chinuade Awe is the Executive Director of Regulations at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And for a quick review of Thursday's equities trading and outlook, we have Temple on board. Well, Temple, I guess it's positive all the way.
Well, it was, and thanks to MTN that rose by some 0.84% yesterday, and of course made of some kind of comeback that we saw on Stanbic IBTC, which was also positive yesterday. Put all that together, we translated to the gains that we saw here yesterday, some 0.38% in terms of what the index is doing. I mean, 2 days ago, the last 2 trading sessions, we heard of the projection that the index of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is going to keep maintaining its 25,000 psychological position, even with the fact that it actually slipped to 24,000 the day before. But yesterday or 2 days ago, we realized that it came back up to 25,000. And of course, it's maintained that level with the equity capitalization also at 13.165 trillion naira. Whether the market will see some profits taken today or not, that's something we'll be asking our guest on the show shortly. Volume of transaction was up by some 26% yesterday. We saw some decline in the value of transaction by some 56% eventually. But if you look at the activity level of the market, banking stocks were up. We got some 3.28% growth on the share price of Fidelity Bank, which is a major bank in the space of retail lending and, of course, SME funding in the market. Stanbic IBTC, as I said earlier, was also positive yesterday in the market. FCMB also jumped by some 2% in the markets yesterday. Look at the consumer goods side of the market. We got some interesting numbers there, pushing up the consumer goods space down to 1.46% for the performance yesterday. Unilever was positive yesterday. We got some 0.26% gain there. We also got a flour mill also was positive in the space yesterday. When you put that together, it gives it a positive trend that we saw here. But if you look at the industrial goods side of the market, this is a segment that has actually been dipping lately. We don't know why, but we'll be able to find out much later. Dangote had dipped in the early part of the week, but of course, if you look at yesterday, WAPCO was down, and of course, Boa Cement also declined by some 0.26%, and all that's translated to this decline that we have here. But for the insurance space, Prestige Assurance was positive by 8.something%. Of course, if you look at one more company there, that will be Consolidated Hallmark Insurance, was also up by some 8% plus yesterday. They just concluded their rights issue, and it was 100% subscribed to by investors in the market. And that's when you put together, translated to what we got in this space yesterday, 2.61% for the entire gain for the insurance space, coupled with other gains that we saw in some other companies. Oil and gas was up by some 31 basis points yesterday. O&O was the major contributor, and that's about the only company that actually saw some positive movements in this space yesterday. Energy stocks, nothing to show for in at the Adova space. The earlier part of the week, we saw some interest here, but then again, until we see some profits taken before we see another movement in the space, or better still, some interest that will be indicated by some more shareholders or investors. Conoil, nothing. 11 PLC, MRS, nothing to show, but 3.33% was what we got in this space yesterday of O&O. Seplat had gained some 10% at the preceding trading session. Of course, we know that there's a little bit of management shifts in that space. There's a new chairman there, Mr. Rogers, and of course replacing Mr. Austin Avuru in that company. So here, this is a major company to watch, in spite of the fact that they are coping right now with the demands and of course production measures from OPEC. That is something that is going to really, really challenge their outputs this year. But we do hope that all of that eventually will translate to some profit in terms of price appreciation. Total, not so much of difference. Eternal PLC, a lot of retail exchange of shares in this space lately, but nothing actually has happened. Japol is a major company that is very, very active in the energy stock segment of the market. But recently, we haven't seen any difference. We've been seeing some millions of units of its shares being traded. We saw 6.60 million yesterday, but nothing changes in the price. It's still 21 kobo. Sometimes, perhaps before the month runs out, we will be able to see some difference there, some difference in that space. Capital Oil, RAC Unity, no change. Because this is also equity space, let's look at the unlisted securities market as well. There was no change here yesterday. Of course, we know that the NSI, which is the index here, is still at 713.39 in terms of the reading now. That has been growing lately. It's been very interesting. At the point in time, we saw when the market capitalization actually dipped to 518 billion naira. But it's then back up. We've seen some key interest in NDEP, that would be Niger Delta Exploration Production Company. We've seen some interest in CSCS lately, and of course, WAMCO. Then it looks like we also had something like cross-dealing on the shares of First Mortgage PLC. Put all of that together, it brought back the market cap to 520-something billion naira. But yesterday only, we got some movements on VFD Group, which is a financial services firm, more like a conglomerate. They've got some real estate and have got some bureau de change and, of course, microfinance bank. All that put together was able to translate to some gains there. Then we saw some 380-something thousand units of shares belonging to CSCS, your capital market depository, also contributed to the 514,675 units of shares that exchanged hands here yesterday in 6 deals. 2 of the deals here took place on the shares of CSCS, while 4 others took place on the shares of VFD Group. Chimeze.
All right, thank you very much, Tempo. Well, let's just see if the dismal unemployment data out today is going to be one of the data investors will probably be looking at today in today's trading. Sure. All right, we'll do an opening call to London as soon as we get back from this break now.